So let's move on to our next topic today, which is Rocket DevOps Test. This is the second of the brand new applications that we created in 2022. Now, we're frequently asked for recommendations for IBMI testing products. And there are plenty of testing solutions for generic application testing, but not many are designed specifically for IBMI. So we decided to create our own, and our RDOT is the result of that. You're all familiar with application testing, I'm sure. How many of you are stuck in the cycle of design, develop, and then just prior to release test, the old waterfall method. Often there are weeks or even months after a feature was designed and coded until it's tested. Lots of reasons for this. Sometimes it's because we've always done it like this, and quite often it's because of a lack of testing resources. Change to agile DevOps CI/CD environment requires now that testing is much more frequent and starts early in the development process. In other words, this is shift left testing, and I'm sure you've probably heard of that term already. The concept of shift left testing means that testing is brought from the end of the development cycle and moves to the start of the development life cycle, and it makes it much more frequent, comprehensive, and relevant. And then if you're lucky and you can find a tool like RDOT, it makes it automated. Speed and quality are critical during the development life cycle now, and developers working on DevOps environments need constant feedback from testing. It's unrealistic for a developer to have to wait 2 months to get feedback on the work. RDOT enables shift lefting testing, and as I implied just now, it automates it for you. One of the biggest headaches that we hear from customers during testing is creating relevant, fresh sets of anonymized test data. And that's one of the first things that we built into RDOT. So RDOT allows you to create anonymized sets of test data and extract only certain, filter records that are extracted from your database. And it allows you to do that in just a few minutes. So sometimes creating test data takes our customers days or sometimes weeks to extract, and we reduce that down to just a few minutes. Some of the other things it can do are things like record and playback green screens and highlight problems. It can submit and monitor batch jobs. We've designed it to operate in what we call an IBMI Plus environment. IBMI Plus for us means IBMI and something else, so IBMI and another technology. So it can even submit and monitor test executions on other platforms like Windows, Linux, or Unix. It's accessed through the portal. So Andy mentioned the testing tab on the RDO portal. So it's accessed through RDO portal. It's designed again using IBM's Carbon Design solution, so there's that consistent look and feel. And we're adding new features to it regularly. In fact, this year we have 2 more releases for RDO test between now and the end of the year. I mentioned RDO test, is accessed from RDO portal, and it does require a separate license. And after today's webinar, we'll be sending you details of how to find more information on RDOT. So let's go back to Andy, who's going to give an introduction to RDOT.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so I'm going to be using, I've got an application, and let's say we've had a developer and they've made some changes and they've put these objects. And so I've got a program here, a file and a display file, and they changed them and they promoted them to the INT and ITG environment in this case. At this case now, we would want to trigger and do some testing on that. And I'm going to show you how we do that using RDOT in a second. I just want to sort of go back a second and say, if we didn't have RDOT, how do we test these objects? And people, do these manually. So if I wanted to run tests over this is merely an example. I may need to first add my application library to the list, go to the main menu, and in this case, because I've changed the programmer file and the display file, and I know it impacts these things, this maintain car park and statistics, I need to run some tests on them. So I may need to go into the car park details, put a license plate number in, select what system it is, the model, and so on, put a mileage in, and specify this. And basically what I've been looking for is an output value to show me that this record had been added to the file. That sort of proves to me that the programs and the files are still working successfully. I may also need to do some other checks. So I go into the statistics menu. I want to add some new data. So I put the month in, the year, and the brand, put the mileage in again, and some other values. And I check that I can still add data. And also, I may want to check that I can retrieve data. And because in this case, I've changed the display file, I might want to, one of my tests maybe that I want to check that this field is still in the relevant position on the screen and it hasn't moved in some strange way. So I could obviously do all of those things manually, but it's error prone. It's not very productive. It slows things down, and there's better ways to do it. And one of the ways is to use Rocket DevOps Test. So I'm just going to try and show you some of the ways that you could automate some of those steps. And again, there are a plethora of different reasons and methods to be able to use RDOT. This is just trying to show you one of those ways. So in RDOT, we have these things called test plans, we have test data and test runs. Inside this test plan I've created, so I would want to be executing this one, and obviously I would do it automatically for true CI/CD at my integration level. And inside my test plan, I have a test suite, and inside the suite, I have a test case. And this test case then consists of different tasks that we want to perform in the test case. And what I'm going to do in this case is do those steps that we were just doing a moment ago. Bear with me 1 second. My system seems to have locked again on me. Okay. Come in here. I think I have a slight comms problem here, but let me just go back to this. Okay. Okay. Well, this is where we'd see the actual suite in here. So this is where we can actually look at the different plans that we can create, and we can add these actions in where we can add a test suite, and then we can extract data, as Chris mentioned. So let me go to the test data section to show you how you initially extract data. You can extract either single files in libraries or multiple files, based on what information you want to see. I'm just going to try something else here. I've got a bit of a slow system here. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to come back in and do the IT thing and log off and on again. Let me just try this. Excuse me 1 second, bear with me. Okay, let me just log out and log back in. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so I'm looking at my test cases here, and this is where I'd see my actual test cases within my test suite. So in that example I just gave you, I would first want to do a data extraction so that I'm going to test with fresh data. Then I'm going to go in and do that maintain car park test, add the statistics and retrieve the data, and just show you how you can automate that. So looking at the data extraction first, with data extraction, the first thing we do is we create something called a data scenario. And here I've selected a library that I want to select data from, files from. So inside my library, I've selected to extract these two files. And then within the files, what we can do is something called obfuscation, and you can do different types. So we basically want to mask the data that the users that are going to do the testing can actually see, because some of it might be sensitive data. So there's different methods. So you can choose any of your different fields and say you would edit that obfuscation. And for example, let's just say I put hello in here and I test that. that's the results that the user would see in the field for that particular file. So they've still got the structure of the file, the data that they see is just been obfuscated. So you can choose to do that with as many fields as you wish. You can add more tables that you want to add in or add more files in there simply. And this is where Chris also mentioned you can do filtering as well. So once you've created your scenario and you've defined what data you want to extract, that's where we then put it into our test plan. So if I just go back into my test plan and show you my test case, this is where I have specified in this specific data extraction, I'm going to use that scenario that I just shown you then, car rental data refresh. I'm specifying the source and host systems. In my case, it's highlighted here as the same, but that could be different. So you could be, picking it up from one LPAR and extracting it to another. And also I'm specifying my source and target libraries as well. So I save this, that's now part of my test case, and that will execute, you'll see in a moment when I run it. Now, one of the other things I've got added in this case is an IBMI screen case. So let me just show you how we set these up. If I edit this, we embed a copy of Rocket Terminal Emulator within Rocket DevOps Test. And this enables you to perform steps in a 5250 session, such as sign on, go to a menu, take these options, do this, add input values, extract output values, and so on. And then we can record them, like you see on the right-hand side here, and then we save it as a JSON file, and we attach it to this test case. So that's exactly what this has done. I've signed on with my user, it's encrypted the password, I added the library list, went to the application menu, took all those options, and then I'm looking for that output parameter, which was at the bottom of the screen, record added. That shows me that when somebody added that works. So what I'm taking as the output value within this test case, I'm looking at the requirements and the parameters, and I'm using that record added output value, and I'm building that into my success criteria to say that should be equal to success. And that's how, when it runs this test, it either determines if it was successful or if it failed. Likewise, with some of the other screen recordings I've got here, I'm using different methods here. In this one, I'm using an input value. So I'm putting a value and adding that into the screen recording and then running it as a test. Now, when I want to run this, I can either run this at the top level as a plan or individual down at the case. So let's run it down at the top, up at the top, sorry. And we can put notes in here. And then I can go to test runs and actually monitor this running in real time. Now, typically, you're going to execute this automatically when you promote something to the ITG environment, and it will trigger this test plan, which will run all of the test cases for us automatically. But for now, we're just going to look at this running manually. We can see it run the first one and the second one. Once it completes, we'll be able to just show you the log files that you can look at here, and you get the correct icons to reflect if it was run successfully or if you have any errors. So here we can see what we've just run. It's done the data extraction. So if I look at this, I look at the output and see it's connected to the system. Then it extracts the two files that I did, shows me how many records were extracted, the from and to libraries, the obfuscation, the shuffle, and different methods you're using. Then I did the maintain car park. So this was the screen recording. It went to sign on, passed the password, took all the options that I told it to, and then received my output variable, which I then used to base it on my success criteria. And the last one was to look at the statistics. So this one was looking for that value because I changed the display file to check that it was in a certain position on the screen, which again met my parameters for success. So we can build that into the pipeline to say that this has now all been successful. It's now ready to go on to the next level in the pipeline, which is now QA. So if we were to look at our releases and we look at this one we've just been working with, which was Rocket, Car, and Rental. we can use the pipeline here to promote that task, which is now at the QA level. Sorry, at the integration level, we can now promote this to the integration level, the next one. And then when it gets there, we will automate it to run this particular test plan, which is the car rental for QA, which may have different cases in, because you may want to test different things at the QA level. Very, very quickly, just some other things you can do with Rocket DevOps tests. Chris mentioned them briefly. I've got an order management one here and in order entry. I can monitor batch jobs. So I may want to change some programs and then call some programs that would use those that we changed. So you can run that as a batch job, specify your job D parameters and so on, specify your logging levels, and also add in parameters and build in your success criteria based on those details. Lastly, we mentioned briefly, you can run things off the IBMI platform. So if you've got some Python scripts or JavaScript or SQL files that you need to update a database with or anything, we can install an agent on other platforms, and then we can execute scripts that run on those platforms to do things as part of your testing. Stop a web service, run some Python updates, run some JavaScript, and so on. So that's just a very quick overview of Rocket DevOps tests. Chris, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thanks, Andy.